What famous person did you regret meeting because they were an ass? He expected my seat on a plane. He was our local news anchor. Actually said, I may look familiar? I said, you're a merchant banker? I met a local weatherman from my neck of the woods. Twice. People love this dude on social media, but the both times I've seen him, he was a total asshole. On the flip side, I met Emilio Estevez at work. He was cool. I used to work in a posh hotel in Canada, vague on purpose, and I had met many famous people during my time there. Most were forgettable interactions honestly, but one stands out as the absolute worst. Chevy Chase. He is a trash human being. He was totally miserable and insulting to all the staff, and we treated him with nothing but professional respect and courtesy. If I ever meet him again I'll tell him to his face what a colossal piece of shit he is. I can't watch his movies since. For the record, the best celebrity guest for me was Dave Grohl. He's an awesome guy. Pete Rose. Little kids wanted his autograph and he was charging them $5 each in the early to mid-70s. I met James Brown back in the 80s when I lived in Vail. The man was dissatisfied with everything and generally drunk. Absolute flip side was meeting Mr. Rogers when I was at Pitt. That man was the real deal. Reggie Jackson. He was a childhood idol of mine. I got the opportunity to get a photo with him at some booth at a trade show called Internet World years ago during the dot-com boom. No one was in line to get pictures with him, so I walked up to get a photo while he was apparently trying to get the girls in the next booth over to sleep with him. He acted all bugged that I asked for a photo, even though that is what he was hired for, and rolled his eyes. I guess he thought I cock-blocked him by just showing up in line to get a picture. I tossed the picture in the trash once I got it. Later that day I got a ball signed by Steve Garvey, who was super nice. He replaced Reggie Jackson as my hero that night. Ace Frehley of Kiss. It was at a rock and roll /TV/ movie memorabilia convention in the mid-90s, shortly before the Kiss reunion, and he clearly didn't want to be there. He didn't talk to fans, didn't say hi, hell, he didn't even look at you when you came to his table. He just signed whatever you placed in front of him and then you were hustled away. On the other hand, Adam Batman West was at the next signing table and he was a totally cool guy. Shook hands, chatted with everyone, signed whatever we wanted, posed for pics, etc. Meeting him more than made up for Ace's surly, hungover douchebaggery. I shit you not, my mom met Bill Cosby once. She said that he kept hitting on her friend. A famous soap opera star in my country, he came into the Dairy Queen I was working at. I didn't know who he was and my coworker started hyperventilating and went to the back. The guy was rude, and when I handed him his cone he said, "Is that all?" Like he expected extra because he was famous. Yeah dude, if you order one scoop you get one scoop. Didn't find out he was famous until he left and my coworker came back to the front. Bobby Flay, we paid hundreds of dollars to go to a fancy event he was participating in. Waited for a long ass time to just meet him and say hi, he looked at us and walked away. Was a dick about it too. Probably only for British people, but my boyfriend saw Peter Kay with his bodyguard in a chippy. Didn't say anything but elbowed his brother. Peter Kay saw him and said, "Yeah, it is me, now fuck off." Pretty harsh considering my boyfriend was only 11 at the time. Gene Simmons. Neat to say that I got to spend a couple of days hanging with him. But he was an ass. Deion Sanders. I interviewed him at an NFL/military event like 8 to 9 years ago and he was a prick the whole time. He threw my lav mic on the ground when he was done instead of placing it in my outstretched hand. I was also active duty military at the time and the event was on a ship. Hey Sanders, if you read it and see this, fuck you dude. Fuck you. James Franco, though I technically didn't meet him but sat in on a panel he did at a film festival. I was in HS and was at the festival with 3 friends, when we got word he was doing a Q&A about one of his movies that had just come out and we got really excited. We waited over an hour to get in to see the panel. We were led into the room where we waited another 45 minutes for him to show up. When he did show up, boy looked rough. It was almost 4 p.m. and he looked beyond hungover. His clothes were dirty, he hadn't showered, and he spent more time talking to the floor than anything else. But the cherry on top? His ego could have filled the room. Every question that was asked he made into a story about how great he was, both actor, director, and producer. I do think some of his stuff is funny, but he's a B actor at best. I remember clear as day some woman asked him to describe a role that was challenging for him and how he overcame it. He just laughed at her. The Q&A ended up being so boring I fell asleep in my chair. 0-10. I have the perfect combination of bad star/good star. It was at Dragon Con, maybe 2005? I'm going through the big autograph room, waiting to get David Carradine's autograph. He looked so mad. He didn't say a word as I told him how much I enjoyed his work. Okay, I get it, maybe he was having a bad day. Next to Mr. Carradine was Mark Singer, star of Beastmaster, V, etc. Mr. Singer is smiling, talking to people as they go by. He looks genuinely happy to be there. Suddenly, a woman behind me stumbled and dropped a huge stack of materials she wanted autographed. Mr. Carradine looked down on her like she was a bug. Mark Singer jumped over his table and started helping the woman pick up her things. Didn't hesitate one moment, just started helping. That when I decided that if I ever became famous, I was going to try to be like Mark Singer, not David Carradine. Bill Cosby, before all his rapiness was publicly known. He came to the restaurant in D.C. where I was a hostess. I came to get him for his table and he said, "Did you need a college degree for this job?" No, man. Have you never met a server before? I met Wayne Gretzky once. Dude's a bit of a code TBHR. I caught him on a bad day. We all get like that. His father, R.I.P., was so much cooler than he was. On the flip side, my brother met Gord Downey, also R.I.P., at a get-together. He was with his girlfriend and her family at one of her parents' friends' place. They're all sitting, chatting, having a good time. Out of nowhere, Gord walks in like it's nothing. Apparently the owners of the house were friends with Gord. My brother, being a huge Tragically Hip fan, was internally freaking, but he kept cool on the outside as to not bother him. He talked with him for a while about sports and things like that. Towards the end of the night, when my brother was getting ready to leave, Gord stopped him and shook his hand while saying, "Thank you for pretending to not know who I am." Kurt Vonnegut. I had to get in touch with him frequently for work, at a non-profit, for several years. He was never once even vaguely polite. My dad has been a radio personality for over 30 years and worked in country music for over half of it. He gets to meet celebrities semi-regularly. Apparently Keith Urban was really nice, Carrie Underwood was kind of mediocre. He caught her right after her performance and she was tired. But Kenny Chesney puts the D&D bag, direct quote from my dad. Kenny promised to sign some pictures, t-shirts, etc. for a couple of kids who won a game through the radio. Kenny instead took a bunch of groupies into one of the back rooms of the radio station with a bottle of whiskey and locked the door. When my dad tried to get him to open the door and fulfill his end of the deal, he called the cops on my dad, and he was lucky enough to get a cop who was a good acquaintance. Cops said there wasn't much he could do other than make Kenny leave. So that's what he did. Kids never got their stuff signed, so my dad gave them some coupons for free pizza. He said that after a few years other radio hosts told him they had similar encounters. Not my story but a co-worker's story. Let's call her Holly. Holly was a flight attendant many years ago, and on one flight Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown were in first class. Holly was going through taking drink orders and politely asked Whitney Houston if she would like something to drink but didn't get an answer. So assuming she didn't hear her, Holly asked her again if she would like something to drink. Whitney Houston looked out the window with a disgusted face in response. Bobby Brown then said to Holly, "She doesn't speak to the help." Then ordered for her. Emo, if you're flying commercial, you are not hot shit. I cannot fathom the level of arrogance it takes to think people are so far below you that they are not deserving of being spoken to by you. Edit, I was not moved by Whitney Houston's death, but she did not deserve to die over this. Shit, y'all. I wouldn't say disappointing, as I never was eager to meet him, but Drake was just unprofessional and egotistical when I worked with him both times. This was before he got big, first award show type level. He's told me to fuck off directly, and I watched his mom calm him down from a tantrum. Jared Leto. I worshipped him as a teenager, mainly from seeing him in Requiem for a Dream and My So-Called Life and his band. But he was the most pretentious and arrogant person in real life. Never meet your heroes. Every time this thread comes up, James Corden ends up taking it over. Hey James. You won't remember me, but me and my friends sat at a table next to you and Harry Styles plus some others in Manchurian Legends in London's Chinatown about 6 years ago. We didn't bother you, but you were a massively entitled cunt who yelled and treated the waitstaff like shit, and when one of my party politely suggested you calm down, you got really aggressive and threatening, in a chubby way. Like a boozy panda. So my question is this: why did Harry seem so cool, while you were such a massive throbbing bellend? This is from his AMA thread. Literally hundreds of posts like this from ex-fans, staff and other actors. David Cross is pretty miserable. He's from Atlanta and his sister runs a food truck in town. Her recipes were all named after David Cross / Arrested Development type stuff. So my wife and I, being fans of David, asked about it and she told us she was his sister. So for months we chat her up anytime we order food from her truck, and eventually David's in town. She invites us to come to the food truck park to meet him, so we bring a poster from the early 2000s and are super pumped to meet him. We get there and she's very anxious and hesitant to introduce us. Weird, but okay. No, it's okay, I'll introduce you. She doesn't. He was incredibly dismissive and unpleasant. Never heard of anyone having a good interaction with him. Best interaction was with Conan O'Brien. He's a total class act. Chatted him up in a bathroom line of all places and said my wife and I were huge fans. He said we should come by the table to chat. I told him we didn't want to interrupt his dinner, but he insisted, then asked if we wanted pictures, and was super cool. Bill Nye. Meet him when I was like 10 years old. He was a complete asshole. When I was 6 or 7, Hulk Hogan pretend WrestleMania chased me out of a boardroom I wasn't supposed to be playing around in at Little League Complex, Cross Bayou in Pinellas County. Anyways, the story is my dad was coaching a game for my brother's team. I went to go sneak around in an empty room. Hulk's son played baseball there too and he must have seen me sneak in the room. I was hiding under the front desk when he came in with his Hulk voice. Who's sneaking around in here? And 7-year-old me nearly had a heart attack. He chased me out of the room while I snuck out acting like he couldn't see me. Looking back at it, you can tell he was just having fun with a kid and his famous persona. But at the time I was absolutely traumatized and nobody believed my story. I met Shane Dawson at a restaurant I used to work at. He used to come in a few times a year with his fiancée and in-laws. He's a dickhole. None of my servers liked him or wanted to serve his family, and I damn near had to fight some little girls off the property because they would not leave without seeing him. Beyoncé's dad. Jerk to waitstaff. Snoop and his dad were awesome, though. That, bar none, was and forever will be my favorite bartending gig. Scott Disick and Kourtney Kardashian. We met them in Cancun. They were snobby and stuck up. This was right after Mason was born. They had no interaction with Mason and the nanny did everything. They were super offended that not everyone at the airport knew who they were. Prince Andrew. Spent a lot of time around him about 10 years ago, as working at private social events he attended. The guy is a total prick. Jared Leto. Hit on my girlfriend at the time, and called me fat. His brother Shannon was super nice though. Cannot wait to see all of these answers cut and pasted on a BuzzFeed article. Jared Leto. I sat next to him on a flight from Monterrey, Mexico back in 2018. Absolute asshole. Met Tiger Woods when I was 15. He slapped my hat out of my hand. A different golfer whom I didn't know ran up, picked up my hat and asked if his signature would be okay. I agreed, but I don't know who he was or what his name was, but my grandpa was pleased upon seeing it. Diana Ross. I worked in a health club in a hotel across the street from a stadium when I was young. She came in, looked at the pool, which was a really decent lap pool, and said, "My bathtub is bigger than this." I replied, "Go back to your bathtub then." She wanted me fired instantly. HR told me to go home for 2 days because if they fired everyone she wanted fired, the hotel wouldn't have any staff. Met Morgan Freeman at a Bed Bath & Beyond. He was shopping for a teapot on a lower shelf and stood upright when I almost walked into him. And I was like, "Wow, you look just like Morgan Freeman." And he, without skipping a beat, was like, "If I was Morgan Freeman, wouldn't I be in Hollywood or something?" And the voice made me now like 99.9% certain it's him. And I was like, "I guess you would. Enjoy your time here." And #X200B. I don't regret meeting him and don't think he was an ass. Just thought it was so Morgan Freeman of him to have a line like that to make you wonder if you met Morgan Freeman or just a guy that likes to act like a character in a bunch of his movies. Justin Timberlake. This was when I was working a drive-thru at a Burger King, around 2002 to 2003 or so. He came up at the drive-thru with someone else driving, but he was sticking his head out like, hey it us. I didn't really recognize him, but he asked if we knew who he was, and I said no, but my coworker said yes. Then he looked at me like, "You don't know?" and was just really confused. My coworker said it was Justin Timberlake, and he said, "Yeah, hell Lou, come on man." He then sort of just had small talk. He asked us how work was, how our day was. But here's the thing, the entire time, he is leaning all the way over on the driver, who is clearly horribly uncomfortable and a bit crushed by him leaning over on him. He asked me if I was from the Middle East, and I said no, and he clearly didn't listen and then said, "Yeah, that sucks, sorry for the whole Afghanistan thing." He then asked us if we wanted his autograph, and we said sure, and he wrote it down and gave it to us. He then said bye and left. It was all in all a really funny experience, and I try not to let it influence my view of him because he was clearly on something, but he just came off a bit like a big goofy attention-loving ass the entire time. I met Bill Nye as a kid. He was signing autographs at the Science Center and seemed really exhausted and sad. It's weird, seeing a famous person face to face and not seeing him in character put a lot of things into perspective for me as a child. Many years later I shook hands with Grant from Mythbusters. He was genuinely cool as fuck. Was sad to hear he died. I was the ass. I saw Don Cheadle at an airport and was thinking about Ocean's 11 and said to my friend, dude, it's Bernie Mac, and he looked back and said, no, I'm the other black guy from Ocean's 11, but at least you liked the movie. When I was working at Best Buy back in 2003-09, Robin Williams came into our store and purchased every single copy of Mrs. Doubtfire. He then whipped out a Sharpie and signed all 50+ copies for the employees at the store. He then stuck around telling jokes and just hanging out with the staff. I just wanted to share, he was the best actor interaction I've had personally. So nice, rest in peace. Thank you guys for watching, I really hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe and like the video. See you soon.